Cyberpunk is one of my favorite games of all time, and maybe the best RPG ever made. It's literally perfect, but there's a bunch of tiny things that I dislike. This is a list of 25 very small mechanics that either add microscopic friction or break my immersion or slightly irritate me. But again, the game is perfect. And as the list goes on, the examples will get increasingly petty and trivial. Hi, I'm Jez, and I might be the only person in the world bothered by most of these. Starting with the boot up sequence. So I have an internal SSD, an i9, 128 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 4090. This is a reasonably beefy PC, but when I double click the game icon, it has to load for 12 seconds. Then we get the Cyberpunk logo, then the CDPR logo, then the engine logo, then the partner logos, then the trademark jargon, then the narrative disclaimer, then the seizure warning, then a press to continue checkpoint, which takes us to another logo menu, which is also a press to continue checkpoint. I just did that, but all good. Then the actual main menu where I have to mouse over or spam arrow keys to hit continue. Then another load screen, which is also a press to continue checkpoint. If I'm frame perfect with my button presses, it's 60 seconds before I can actually play the game. If I only have an hour, then that's almost 2% of my playtime gone to this one boot up sequence. There's no native way to disable or skip any of this. Now, the first time I boot up the game, I want to see every splash screen because I'm rock hard like that. But every time forever with no way to skip is so cruel and unusual. I have to assume it's a legal requirement to show most of that, because if it's just a creative choice, then I will commit unalive. Also, why are they so afraid I might not want to continue? Did one of the playtest PCs blow up and kill several people because the GPU melted while the game was idle? Why else would they demand so many press to continues? And speaking of the loading screen, you better have your eyes locked in on the top right, because there's no audio cue that the game has finished loading and it's actually waiting for you. But right now, you're a generic middle-aged white man sprinting through the streets. A friend told you it's a zombie apocalypse, but they're vegan, so what do they know? You start to wonder, is this real life or an open world RPG called Darkest Days? A cop tries to grab you, but you've always been ungrabbable. He drops his gun in the skirmish. Does he even need that gun for anything? Of course not. It's your gun now. You arrive back home. But why is there a bat on the ground? You love bats. Your wife knows you love bats, but something isn't right. The house is destroyed and she's not there. So now you're on a highway heading to the one place she might be, a handbag store. You'll have to kill zombies to get there, but you're ready to watch those limbs fly off one by one as the blood squirts like a super soaker. You're pretty sure this free-to-play game is on PC and mobile. You're shooting more zombies. But how can it be free-to-play? You ask yourself out loud. You're crying. So what if you're crying? You've started building a sanctuary with other survivors. Sanctuary. Now you're fighting a giant raid boss using a steel beam as a weapon. Who uses a steel beam as a weapon? Lately, you've been shooting other players because PvP is very addictive. It's optional, but so is finding your wife at this point. You're riding a drone safely into the distance while you download Darkest Days using my link in the description. Sponsored by NHN.
Back to the loading screen rant.
There's a very minor visual cue in that the bar disappears and the text says press to continue. But if you're vaguely staring at the center of the screen like I do, just waiting for the fun to start, then you're gonna waste some extra time here probably. This tricked my wife almost every time, and she sat there longer than she needed to when she was first trying the game. And I know what you're thinking, Jez, there's a mod for this, and probably everything else on this list. You're 100% right, of course there is. But I'm a dad now. I have so little time to game. To fix all these tiny issues, I would have to install like 20 to 30 mods while making sure they're all compatible, tweaking them individually so they actually do what I want them to do, then pray to God CDPR doesn't update the game and break them overnight. Also, I bought this game on GOG, not Steam, so everything's slightly more annoying, and yes, I regret that. Also, I could have been on console, where there's no mods at all, but I am on PC, so you got me there. Also, if I want the option to grab my Steam Deck and not play in my office, mods complicate that. Long story short, no mods. Also, the entire genre of game critique can't really exist if you're allowed to say, just use mods, lol. Now, let's talk about the weapon crosshairs. There's no way to choose a custom or minimalist one, even though Counter-Strike figured that out like 25 years ago. Each gun has its own crosshair baked in, and most of them are pretty good. Shotguns, clean dot, love it. Assault rifles, clean dot, love it. SMGs, clean dot, don't love it, just kidding, obviously I love it. But now we've come to the two weapons I used. Sniper rifles, we're starting to get pretty busy here, but snipers aren't meant to be hip fired, so that makes sense. When you look through scopes, it's better. But finally, the weapon I used the most out of everything, the pistol. Weirdly chunky, I think you'll agree. Now, when you actually aim with the pistol, depending on what scope you use, it's a pretty good clean dot. But A, I'm not always aiming in, sometimes I hip fire, and B, that means means I'm stuck with this abomination of a crosshair for all my non-combat exploration, which is a lot of the game. But Jez, just put your gun away while exploring and that hides the crosshair. Okay, that's true, but I do like having my gun out a lot of the time. And putting it away means there's nothing marking the center of my screen, which is also slightly annoying. Sometimes you have to be kind of precise when looting or interacting with stuff, so not having the center marked is also not great. Wow, Jez, did you even check the settings, my guy? Because under the accessibility tab, there's an option called center of screen dot overlay. So if you enable that, you can turn off weapon crosshair in the HUD settings. This would make the crosshair minimal for both exploration and combat. I also thought this was the perfect solution, except it created two very specific problems. The first is that because it's an accessibility setting that's supposed to reduce motion sickness, it stays visible all the time, including cutscenes. The only time it disappears is when you aim in. I don't know why, but having it appear for every cutscene like moment when you know it shouldn't be there just slightly ruined my immersion. Didn't love that. But I could have overlooked it if it wasn't for the second problem, which only affects one single piece of cyberware in the entire game, which just so happens to be integral to my entire build and playstyle, and that is optical camo. I do the most damage with my Hitman stealth pistol build when I'm using optical camo, specifically thanks to my main weapon, the Her Majesty, because while the camo is active, I gain perfect accuracy and guaranteed headshot crits along with increased damage. In other words, my dick is huge. But look what happens when I have weapon crosshair turned off and center dot enabled, which we both thought was the perfect solution. When I use optical camo to go invisible and aim in, there's no dot or crosshair. It is surprisingly hard to shoot this way. The camo is strange because even with the default crosshair enabled, when you aim in and then go invisible, it reverts to the hipfire crosshair, which I find weirdly hard to see through. Am I out of touch here, or does this look fine to everyone else? Now, if I wasn't using pistols specifically, the default crosshair would be fine. And if I wasn't using optical camo specifically, the center dot overlay would also be fine. But F me in the butt, I'm using both. Let's see if you can spot the next thing on my list. This is me talking to Takamura on a street corner. We're chatting away, no problem. But is there anything slightly breaking your immersion while you look at him? Maybe I'm alone here, but the myriad of vendor icons covering his face and body is a little annoying. So what usually happens is that as you approach a shop, their icon fades into view and sticks to the HUD like you see here. But for some reason, they stay on your HUD up to like 100 meters away, which is definitely too far. If I wanted to find a specific shop, I would just track it on the map. So ideally, after like 10 meters, they would just disappear automatically. Okay, Jess, just turn them off in the HUD settings. What's the problem? Good point. There is an option called HUD markers under the interface settings. However, this one toggle affects shop icons and vehicle markers and people of interest and the main objective marker, which is kind of critical in my opinion. If it was just the shop icons, no problem at all. This would be perfect. But for some reason, they've baked so much stuff into this one toggle that it's completely impractical. Now, if there was a setting where I could only show the HUD markers while scanning, you know, the green overlay, that would be a cool option. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because you'd be scanning for additional intel, so you'd expect to see those markers then. But alas, as it stands, I'm tormented by these video game icons when all I want to do is lose myself in the world and forget it's actually a video game. Remember I said these are going to get increasingly petty, so don't get mad. Do you also feel like summoning a vehicle is a little too clunky? Especially bikes. First you have to hit summon and it spawns either kind of far away or on the wrong level completely, like a highway above you or something. Then either it gets stuck kind of far away due to some obstacle, or you have to wait for it to drive up to you. If it does, you'll have to wait for it to stop, and hopefully it doesn't stop too short or overshoot, because it can do both. Then if it's a bike, you have to make sure you approach exactly from the side to avoid opening the stash in the back accidentally. All of these tiny steps add up to just enough friction that I try to avoid summoning a car if possible. It's the same reason I mostly avoided summoning Roach in Witcher 3. It was slightly too clunky and I didn't mind running through that world. My favorite vehicle summon mechanic of all time was in Hogwarts Legacy. Look at this. You open the wheel, press a button, and instantly you're on the vehicle. It's completely frictionless. Now this is where I'm a little hypocritical because I've seen some people say it breaks their immersion, that it's so instant to summon that broom. There's no wand animation and you don't have to go and jump on the broom, but it lights my little goblin brain on fire with dopamine to instantly be on the vehicle and flying. God, it's getting me fired up right now, now just thinking about it. And Cyberpunk is the ultimate technology-based sci-fi setting. Why can't we materialize a bike made of nanobots directly under us and instantly start driving? That would have been so sick. It is case by case for me, but if I had to choose between less friction or more immersion, I'll often go for less friction. I don't know why, but stuff being slow and clunky just frustrates me. Probably because I have brain rot from being terminally online. One more thing I have on driving is the overall navigation system. The way it's currently set up, when you've got something marked on the map, you'll mostly be looking here in the top right at the mini-map. The only problem is, Cyberpunk has one of the most gorgeous open worlds ever created. So I don't want to have to look up here. I want to look here and take in every single pixel of this interactive art piece. Now this is cheating, but there is a mod for this called in-world navigation, but this isn't a mod video, so I'm only showing you as proof of concept. Imagine these arrows were a small thin line that's much more subtle, so it doesn't stand out as much. I just can't believe there's no in-world navigation option in the base game. Then again, the mod isn't that popular, so maybe most people don't mind looking at the minimap a lot. IDK. This next one is special to me because Cyberpunk has the best movement mechanics of any RPG I've ever played. Yeeting around with double jump and extended air dash is some of the most fun I had in the entire game. It's also why anything under a kilometer away, I never bothered to get in my vehicle. Because if you spam jump and dash, it feels like you're flying along. Great, so what's the problem, Jess? Well, the thing is, you can only dash once in the air. They lock you out of dashing again until you touch the ground. And for a chronic dasher like me, you may as well rip my nuts in half because that is such a buzzkill. It's weird though because the air dash is only horizontal. It doesn't slow your downward trajectory at all. So you can't avoid fall damage by dashing. I truly don't think it would be overpowered to do one more air dash per jump, but it would feel orgasmic. Add a 4th level to the air dash perk tree that says unlocks the ability to dash twice in midair. Now to do the double jump, you have to use leg cyberware called reinforced tendons. And as you can see, I'm very attached to this jump specifically. The other leg cyberware does cool stuff too though. This one increases sprint speed by 60% but then tapers off. This one allows you to charge your initial jump but for a single big boy jump. And this is the one I should have been using for my stealth build because it gives 50% quieter movement and increased crouch speed. Why am I telling you this though? Because the next thing on my list might be a little too greedy, but imagine if we could equip 2 different leg cyberware options. The idea of combining the burst of sprint speed with the double jump and air dash has already got me burping and squirting. Let's not pretend this game is about being fair and balanced anyway. By the end, you're an untouchable god no matter what playstyle you choose. So why not let me equip 2 legs? Oh no, I'll arrive at my destination 20% faster and be slightly more evasive. Look, there's already 2 different perks that give you an additional cyberware slot for the skeleton and for the hands. All I'm saying is there should be something for the legs. We are now entering the realm of truly insignificant things that irk me. Continue watching at your own risk. So you know how if you want to just roam free with no formal objective, you can untrack any active quest? I love that option. What I don't love is that as soon as you do almost anything like clearing a NCPD marker on the map by killing some guys and grabbing the loot, as soon as you're done with that thing, the game auto tracks another quest again, even though moments before I had untracked any active quest. Doesn't do this every time, but it's often enough to be annoying. It feels like the devs don't trust me enough to explore on my own, so they keep retracking stuff for me right away, and I don't like that. Another small thing that happens with quests is a prompt will pop up saying, would you like to track this quest? When it's already my active quest. This happens surprisingly often. In this first example, you can see my active quest is there is a light that never goes out, and I get a new job prompt for there is a light that never goes out. Press Z to track this job. And then after reading some text messages, my active quest is from her to eternity. But what's this? Uwu, new job from her to eternity. Press Z to track. IDK if this is just a bug, but either way, it's going on the list. Have you noticed that when killing people, they often drop their weapon away from their body? But now you have to loot the weapon and their body, which is twice as many things. When you have to do that for an entire room of enemies, it does start to get tiresome. I wish just by looting the body, the weapon would also show up in that list, so I don't have to go hunting through the grass. When you call someone in this game, you have to wait 3 seconds for them to pick up. And that's 2 seconds too long for this brain cell. This is a classic case of friction versus immersion. Is it more immersive that they don't pick up right away? Of course. But if I could choose, they would just instantly pick up because aren't phones wired directly into people's brains in Cyberpunk anyway? No wait, only talk. Speaking of audio, the game does this thing where if someone's talking near you and you use the scanner to zoom in on something, it distorts their voice so they sound more digital. I don't love this, but it does make sense, I suppose. However, what doesn't make sense is that when I zoom in with right click, no digital overlay, not scanning, it also distorts their voice just as much. I don't know why this bothers me, but it does. It doesn't make sense. This next one is controller specific, and I discovered it while playing on my Steam Deck. If you're scanning a room and trying to look around at stuff, your crosshair will constantly get stuck on big objects because of the aim assist. Like I was at war just trying to look around because the pull is so strong. This footage is me holding the right stick in a fixed position, and look how much the crosshair sticks to big objects. This could be because I had aim assist turned all the way up, so if that's the case, that is my bad. I'm now wondering, do most controller players have aim assist turned all the way up like I did, or is this a completely self-inflicted wound? Cast your vote in the comments. This next one is hard to articulate, but basically selling weapons feels bad. Like specifically, there's something about this UI layout that's really clunky and impractical. I constantly feel like I'm accidentally going to sell something I want to keep, and I have to hover on the right-hand column, not the left. Otherwise, the weapon info hides the upcoming weapon, so I can't look ahead and have to slow right down while selling them. It just feels poorly thought out. Now, I love the in-game ads of Cyberpunk so much that I made an entire video about them. They are true works of art. So that's what makes me sensitive to the following two problems. And I don't know if it's just a weird bug for me specifically, but I would constantly see ads up close that haven't loaded in properly. I have all graphic settings on max quality, but these low-res textures are nothing but cock and ball torture for me. I try to read every single ad as I'm running around because I love them. So I notice every time something looks weird and it crushes my immersion. The other thing I don't love is seeing the same ad on 6 out of 7 billboards across the street. Cyberpunk is pretty guilty of showing like 5 identical ads in the same general spot. It happens everywhere, and it's such a shame because there's so many incredible ads to get through. Just show them all different. Another thing I catch myself thinking as I'm air dashing through the streets is that you don't see anyone else doing this, which does take me out of it a bit. You do see regular bandits chasing other bandits in cars occasionally, but I would love to see a full-blown cyber psycho running around shooting cops every now and then. Is that too much to ask? It definitely is, but still, it would be cool. Have you noticed that most NPCs will chastise you if they're waiting for you to respond to something they said? It is quite immersive because in real life, if you stare blankly at someone that's talking to you, they will freak out. The only problem is because each NPC only has a few idle AFK phrases to get you to respond, often they don't match the tone of the current conversation, which slightly breaks my immersion every time. For example, no matter how sweet the last thing that Pan Am says to you is, if you wait 10 seconds to respond, one of her little AFK prompts is, "What's gotten into you?" in a really aggressive tone. I also found one on a side quest with this agent that's been mixed way too quiet. I'm going to show you the clip, but the audio is a bit glitched, so please ignore that. I effed up. But when you hear the AFK phrase, just know I did not touch the volume. That's how quiet it actually was.
He truly believes what he says.
What are you waiting for?
Now it's time to go even more trivial beyond. Please equip your hazmat suit, gamer. Sometimes in Cyberpunk, people just text you too soon. This is a rare example of me choosing immersion over friction. I don't know why it bothers me so much that sometimes you'll talk to someone, and then once you finish, you'll get 3 footsteps away and they text you. Look, this is me talking to Mr. Hands. I close the door, and literally right outside that same door, he sends me a text message. If he had waited for me to just leave the building, it would have been fine. The same thing happened to my wife when she played. She spoke to Coach Fred, and then a few steps away, she got in the elevator and he was already texting her. She immediately said, "That's so weird and creepy," and I completely agree. Back to the HUD. That's right. You thought we were finished with the HUD, but there's something else. This whole cluster in the bottom left is a bit of an eyesore. If I could hide the 3 on the left permanently, I would. The phone, the car, and the radio, all non-essential. Unfortunately, when I go to settings and turn off action buttons, it hides the entire corner. Ew. This is annoying because I kind of need to see my optical camo timer and my Sandevistan timer. Why couldn't they separate the 2 groups into communication buttons for the 3 on the left and combat buttons for the 3 on the right? I also don't like that the entire bottom left cluster is always visible on the HUD, even when I stow my weapon. Why not let me tie them to my weapon being drawn, like the ammo count in the bottom right? Half of the bottom left cluster is combat related, so why show them when my weapon isn't out? Am I crazy here? Does no one else get annoyed by unnecessary things being on the HUD all the time? Now, maybe I just have my monitor's brightness turned up too high, but I find the bloom in this game to be kind of insane sometimes. If I'm inside and trying to look outside during the day, good effing luck, dude. It's often too bright in cars as well. I've got a bunch of examples of this. I checked my gamma settings and they're almost at default. Dropping the slider down a bit didn't seem to help either. I get that it's immersive because that's how lighting works in real life, but I'd like to turn it down by at least 50%. Okay, one final thing on the HUD, and I don't know if this is even practical. I wish the active quest text was the same width as and directly under the minimap. I just feel like that would be so much more satisfying to the eye. Look, I did it in Photoshop. How hard can it be? Lol. Another thing that my zoomy little TikTok brain hates is when I'm double jump air dashing along and the road slightly declines beneath me. I break my legs on impact and take fall damage. How is there not a perk to almost eliminate fall damage by the end of the game? No one likes fall damage, especially if all I did was double jump from flat ground down a small ramp. So if you're having a text conversation with someone, every time they start typing, you have to wait. And the length of time loosely corresponds with how long the text they send is. Now, F me, that is extremely immersive, but it's also so annoying. Cut it out. Look at this string of text I got from Ashley. It takes 2.5 seconds, then 4.2, then 3.1, then 4.5, then 2.5. That's 20 seconds of waiting to get this info. Get it together, Ashley. Also, send it all as one text next time. You're blowing up my notifications for no reason. The last one is literally a bug, but it happens every time I loot a chest, so it's on the list. The item currently being highlighted isn't what gets picked up most of the time. Look at this clip. I select a police helmet, but when I press take, I get the tier 5 item components instead. Then I select the gas mask, but when I press take, I get the tier 4 item components instead. Only then can I actually grab the tier 3 item components followed by the gas mask and the police helmet. The last few items in a chest seem to work, but the first few don't. For someone like me who enjoys actually reading what each piece of loot is as I pick it up, this is a microaggression every time. Things must correspond with the appropriate thing. In conclusion, Cyberpunk is perfect, and there's nothing I would change, except the 25 things in this video. If you want to get in the credits and help me make small, unusual videos like this, hit the Patreon, or if cash is tight, at least hit subscribe, you filthy gremlin. The video on screen now is me gushing about the ads of Cyberpunk for 12 minutes straight, so you should watch that.